send an engineer to talk about design. That doesn't make any sense. I'm not qualified to have that. But actually, that's the way Yahoo works. The way we work at Yahoo, that we don't suddenly separate design on one side and engineering on the other side, and try to figure things out. We have people work together very closely. And it's not just design and engineering. Something that's very important to Yahoo is content. So if you think about the whole user experience, the user experience of the opinion is a combination of content, design, and engineering. And all three really work together. If you don't have them together, you're not going to get a good result. So I'm going to talk about user experience. We're going to talk about user experience and how, as an engineer, we work with design and how we actually build all of that, build applications that have the best user experience. So, like I said, the first thing is actually the content. You need a good application because it's going to be the same as the content. If you don't have the right content, you're not going to have anything to do. Trying to build a weather application and you don't have access to the weather forecast, and you don't actually have a weather application. Doesn't matter. So you start with the right content, and then you actually design and you engineer the application around that content to get the best results. And the content, again, like I said, is important. If you look at Yahoo's application, you look at, let's say, the weather application, and the newsletter application, and the finance application, they're designed very differently, they're implemented very differently. Why is that? Because the content is different. Yahoo wants to make applications inspiring, entertaining, that's part of the user experience. But that process differently from application to the next. One nice little thing that I found very entertaining in our weather application, if you've got newsletter connectivity, you've got a nice little cloud that is crying down, crying in terms of thing, because you can access the weather forecast. That's really nice, that's really entertaining. Should we do that in the finance application? Well, hell no. That's not at all what the finance person wants to see when it has connectivity. They want to get the best way to actually get that data. So, again, the whole user experience depends on the content, and then you have it design and implementation to touch on. Design, again, and implementation and technology really move together hand in hand. We use the Flickr application. Flickr application has something that's pretty hard to implement. Just getting it to be stable and to not run out of memory. It's a pretty hard problem on Android to target even the smaller devices. Well, it's hard if you're trying to do it on KitKat. If you try to do it on anything other than KitKat, it's even harder because the bitmap recycler requires that you have the exact same pixel count. That's where it can be a problem. And that's if you try to do it on Gingerbread. And now you can't. It's literally impossible to use the bitmap API on Gingerbread and to build an application like Flickr. And yet, we have it working on Flickr. We have Flickr already on Gingerbread. How did we do that? We really knew that this was the right design, that the infinite stream of photos and the nice photos that we have on the side was the right way to actually build the Flickr application. Was really the way we wanted to show our users. How do we solve it? Well, a whole lot of engineering. We actually built a network library that's able to deal with the volume of data that we get out of Flickr at the right speed. And more importantly, we built an imaging library that deals with memory management for images, that deals with image decoding for bitmaps, that deals with blurring, that deals with transparency, that takes care of all of these aspects. If you want to see how we did it in detail, by the way, this is all open source. We have a project on GitHub called Igloo, and you can actually go see the entire imaging library, the entire imaging pipeline that we use for Flickr. That's one of the ways we really solve big problems. We actually want to have the right design, we want to have the right final user experience, and we actually have design and engineering work hand in hand to really build these experiences together. So again, in the end, design is not an end goal. Engineering is not an end goal. The user experience is the end goal. And you've got to do what it takes to actually adapt the design, adapt the engineering to the final user experience in a way that's consistent with the goals. We had a lot of great talks about Roman Lurie right now, or an hour ago, giving us really what is material design, and then we just talked here with Dunbar about how to actually go beyond, how to break the guidelines. Yahoo's approach about designing applications that will follow philosophy that we call daily habits. And by that I mean we focus on the things that users do every single day. If a user only does a task once a month or once a year, it's not something that you might want to spend a lot of effort on. If a task is something that the user is going to do every day, now that's an important task. That's how we decide which applications we do work with. If you care a little bit about finance, you're going to check your reports every day. If you actually walk around outside and you live in California, you're going to be checking the weather every day. California is actually here, it's sunny from April to November. If you care about photography, lots of photographers love to actually publish one picture a day, so it's by definition a daily habit. Your email is obviously for everyone a daily habit. Even launching an application is for everyone a daily habit. It's an hourly habit, in fact. We have an application called attendees that's a launcher that really does exactly what you need at the moment you need it. So those daily habits are important for us at a very high level, deciding which applications we design and we implement. But as well, within each application, the daily habit is very important. If you think of an application like News Digest that gives you news twice a day, reading the news itself, that's a daily habit. And we've thought very, very hard about the design of News Digest and the part that actually reads the news to be really adaptive to reading the news and to really be as seamless as possible, as quick as possible, so that you can get your daily fix of news, or twice daily fix of news in a few minutes and be done. You're in the know, you know what's going on in the world, and you can move on. And we've really pushed very hard the design around News Digest, around the news reading experience. But then there's another aspect of News Digest that you might want to use actually every day. Just changing the settings, true notifications or not, which edition of News Digest do you want to report, the Canadian edition or the US edition or the international edition? Those settings that I need, wait to be setting is not actually a daily habit. So we've actually tried to make that settings panel a lot more conventional, let's say. It follows a lot of the patterns that users will expect so that they don't have surprises, don't have anything to learn. The setting items is the last item in the contextual menu in action bar. It's exactly what user is expecting to be. It's using standard, the panel is using standard checkboxes, standard behavior, standard previews. And that's for us the guideline, and I think that's going to apply very well in the also when we had this morning. That's the guideline about what to work on. What is a daily habit, even within an application, that the users will want to actually learn, they will come back to it every day, and they will actually learn to use exactly this part of the application every single day to do what they want. And then another part of the application that the users are not using every day, that they will want to behave like the rest of the system, and that's going to fit within the guidelines. So for us, that part is really extremely important. What is so important to the user that the user experience has to go beyond the guidelines, beyond the whole guidelines, very soon beyond the material guidelines, to do exactly what users want. And what are the parts of the user that are going to be less familiar to the user that have to behave exactly like the guidelines, so that they're familiar from day one, even if the user has never seen that part yet. And that's for us a big part of the design philosophy. I've been asking for questions. I don't have any yet, so do it for us. Questions? No question yet? Okay, I'm going to continue asking the questions and I'll give the answer. It's great because I have them prepared, so I'm taking the lunch. Digging deeper into the implementation, everybody keeps asking the question and it's still a problem. Should we be using views or should we be using HTML? It's always a hard question. Yahoo's answer is actually we use both. We use both because views are better at doing certain things and HTML is better at doing other things. So why don't we use the best tool for every single task? We use HTML for things like the login flow. The login flow is something that changes based on security constraints, based on the evolution of your backend systems. If your login flow is baked into the app and you ever need to change it, now you've got to force every single one of your users to actually update the application just in order to change your login flow. That's something that's painful in general for Android. It's especially painful for users that might not have super connectivity, because now you're forcing them to actually download 5 megabytes of data just so they can log in. This is not a good experience for them, and the login flow is not something that is so commonly used anyway. It has to be deeply customized. So for that, HTML works perfectly. Just put the login flow into a web view, have it wrap the current version of the login flow as it evolves into your application, display it as HTML, and you're happy. Your security faults are happy, your identity faults are happy. And the day you suddenly add two-factor authentication, you don't have to deploy a new app, just deploy a new market. There's another case, fairly obviously, where who uses web views. We actually display a lot of content in our app. Some of that content was initially designed to be web content. You take the actual Yahoo application, take the finance application, you take the sports application, they display a lot of news items that were formatted initially as HTML. What's the best way to display HTML? Well, it's a web view. Why would we use anything else? So we just actually display a web view. In some cases, you're in a browser-like environment, so we display web views in an environment that looks like a browser. So the URL bar, so the back key. In some cases, it's a lot more transparent. You don't actually know it's a web view. You're in a Yahoo app, you see a summary of an item, you swipe it up, and now you get the whole version of the item. You just transition from a native view to a web view very distance. In many other cases, though, native views are still the way to go, for essentially every other case. Native views, they have all the other advantages. They're faster, they're more flexible, they're more customizable, but mostly they let you deal with the corner cases that web views don't let you deal with. You want to deal with gestures with web views? Oh, that's really annoying. You deal with pinch to zoom? That's even more annoying. Swiping from the edge? Don't even try. Accessibility? Oh, this is tricky. Want to deal with situations where you have to work offline? Well, everything is hard. All of those things are hard. So use web views when they make sense, and use plain views for everything else, because they make sense for just about everything else. Very important in terms of design, because that also helps with implementation. Don't try to pretend. When something is a web view, don't try to pretend it's actually native views. That's really hard to implement, and then it doesn't actually behave the right way. And it ends up being more frustrating for the users than just having your web view behave like regular HTML. Same thing, or even worse. Don't try to actually make your native views behave like HTML content. That also doesn't work. Usually designers don't ask for that too much, but sometimes they do. That also doesn't work. And the worst of all, do not try to implement iOS paradigms in either web views or Android views. That is a recipe for a lot of frustration, a lot of frustrated users, frustrated developers, frustrated designers. Nobody wins in that. There are only users who actually who go all the way trying to implement iOS designs and then not have a good experience in the end. There's no good experience that can come out of that. I'm going to be talking a little bit about material design. I'm not going to pretend that I'm really as much about material as Roman does. So if you've got questions about material, go ask him, don't ask me. But material design for Yahoo is first exciting. It's very exciting because it looks good. It feels good. And Yahoo loves to do applications that look good and feel good. So instead of having to fight the framework, you're going to be able to work into it, you're going to be able to work on top of it. That is, for us, that's the biggest deal. It's still brand new. The guidelines are still incomplete. Even if you try to look at Google's own applications, they're not consistent. So you can't even reverse engineer the guidelines out of Google's applications because you see Google doesn't even have guidelines yet that they're able to follow themselves. So we still all have to figure out what that's going to be. Interesting aspect about material, you've used a lot of Yahoo's applications. We have a lot of traditional bits of UI, traditional pixels, but we have a lot of photos. We have a lot of transparency. We love to darken things. We love to blur things. And we're trying to think right now about what that's going to mean in the world of material. The base guideline for us is going to be very easy. Materials are not electronic paper. A lot of what we've seen from Roman, a lot of what we've seen coming from Google's application, is that material is using flat square sheets of matte paper. What is Yahoo going to do? We're just going to have different kinds of paper. We're going to have glossy photos. We're going to have transparency film. We're going to have tracing paper that's going to give us that blur effect. We're going to have more. If you look at News Digest, in many ways, News Digest is all the material already, way before the time. What's very interesting about News Digest, the paper is not actually cut like a square, it's cut like a wedge in the middle. That's just another way to do material design. So we've already built things that look like material design, we're going to continue expanding on top of that. The transparency film I was talking about, that's what we have inside weather. The blur effect that I was talking about, that's what we have in Epic. If you're not on the center page, if you have a photo of the background, you go to the side page, we've got a lot of blur there. We also have it in weather pressure, as you saw that. So material design for us is interesting, challenging. Mostly for us, it's not a goal, it's really a starting point. We're going to start from material, we're going to start from the basic philosophy that the world is actually offering us. And we're going to build on top of it. More materials, more shapes, maybe more animations. We're still trying to figure it out, so we're very, very excited about it. Again, I was talking about that imaging library that we have. That's going to be a key for us in terms of doing material. As soon as we want to deal with very large photos, and as soon as we want to actually go work on older versions of Android, we're going to have to continue using it. There is a question, so I'm going to answer it. The question about the imaging library and specifically how we handle the blurring. Do we do it in random script? The answer is no, we actually do it in native code. It turns out that when you use a blurred image as the background of a UI, unlike what you might be doing in Photoshop for very precise work, the blur doesn't actually have to be very precise. So there are some very, very good blur algorithms that actually look good enough. How about if we use, I think it's a triple convolution of a step function. It's very, very simple, it's extremely fast to implement. It works well enough. In fact, even the image decoding itself is actually native code. It's a part of JPEG Turbo that we optimize a little bit. So all of that is native code for us. That gives us the portability, especially if we want to go back to Gingerbread. Render script on Gingerbread is not so easy to get to work, especially if you want to be using Gradle. So all that image library is all plain native code and DK. Also saves us from the text method limits. Material design is another very big advantage for Yahoo and for everybody else. It finally leaves a lot of room for branding, for personalization of applications. It doesn't tell you you have to use this layout and this color and this size for your logo or anything like that. Material design is going to let everyone really inject their own identity into the way Android apps work, into the way they look. For us at Yahoo, that's very important. We have a very strong brand, and we've always struggled so far in Android getting that brand to come out. Material is going to help us a lot, and sure it's going to help a lot of other people. So we are thinking already about color schemes, we're thinking about typography, thinking about logo shapes, we're thinking about icon sets that specifically represent what Yahoo does and how Yahoo applications work and how they work together. Very big aspect of Android user experience. One that nobody thinks about until it's too late is the cross-app navigation, cross-app interaction. The way Yahoo works, and in a way that's a little bit of our weakness, we actually have a very large mobile team, hundreds of people, but we have that mobile team split into very small groups, almost startups. Groups of typically 15 to 20 people. So you can try to divide and guess how many you have, but it's several dozen. And we have groups that have their engineers, the designers, product manager, tester, engineering manager, all sitting together. This is great because we never have the problem of the designer creating a design, throwing it over the wall, and then having an engineer receive that and actually struggle to implement it. Because the designer and the engineer are sitting side by side anyway. As the designer comes up with an idea, the engineer walks by, looks at the screen and says, hey, that's cool, oh, that's going to be hard. As the designer gives a design to the engineer, and sees the engineer for 3 days, like that, their hand between the hands on the forehead. They've just realized, the designer realizes right away, oh my god, that's my engineer to do something really, really hard. So we have that very good collaboration within applications. Our weakness, as a result, is that we have a hard time working between applications. Yet for Android, that is incredibly important. So that's something to take into account very much as part of the user experience. How do the apps work together? How do the apps work together for Yahoo within our own large ecosystem, but even in general within the whole wide Android ecosystem? We've asked ourselves at Yahoo, ignoring technical constraints, would we want to have a single Yahoo application that covers everything that Yahoo does, from the fashion magazine all the way to finance information and email and fantasy sports and all the things that are currently covered by Yahoo applications? So we've actually asked ourselves, it's actually an easy question. It took about 30 seconds to say, oh God, no, it's a horrible idea. It's a horrible idea because the information complexity, the information design of an application like that would be far too deep to be manageable on a single screen, a single small screen like a phone. So for Yahoo, the goal remains to actually have separate applications. Doesn't mean that we're not going to split applications or merge applications every now and then. If you have been using Fantasy Sports at Yahoo, a year ago we had 4 applications, one for football, one for baseball, one for basketball, one for hockey. Starting this year, we had a single one. A lot of refactoring went in. It turned out it made a lot more sense to have a single application that would be very consistent, especially so that players who love to play fantasy across multiple sports would have the same entry points, the same settings, the same experience with their user file. But in general, Yahoo is going to continue having the applications kept well separate. That's going to mean Yahoo being Yahoo, we have a very long history of having lots of properties, lots of verticals. We're going to continue having a lot of navigation between our applications. What solution have we built for that? We actually use a navigation drawer. Just like if you go to any Yahoo web page on your desktop browser and you have at the top of the web page a very thin bar, that's fairly obtrusive, but gives you quick navigation from one Yahoo property to the next. We actually have cross-application navigation in the navigation drawer on a drawer. We actually quickly iterate with our users to go from one application to the next, and we even have links that take you to the web pages of a few cases where we have applications. I was talking earlier about making and change things. That's another example where we have some dynamic aspects. It's not actually HTML, but the list of applications that are presented in the navigation drawer is actually configured server-side, so that when we suddenly release, let's say, news digest, we can suddenly cross-link to news digest from all the other applications by just changing a little bit of server configuration without having to deploy an application when you have for news digest. It's especially good when you have an emergency situation where you have an application that you don't want users to have. But then you just remove it from the navigation drawer and you make it a little bit harder for them to find it. That's only one way to go between applications. That's what we call top-level navigation. We go from anywhere into your main application to the top of News Digest. There's another aspect that's even more important, even harder to design. And by that I mean designing early so that you can implement it the right way. That's what we call deep linking. And that is when you've got an application that gives you a preview of a little bit of content, how do you get to the deeper application and specialize for that kind of content? An example, using Yahoo Weather. Yahoo Weather displays backgrounds that come from Flickr. That's a part of the Flickr project. It's called the Weather Project. We don't want to display the whole UI of Flickr in the Weather app. That's just way too much. So at the bottom right of every photo on Flickr, every weather photo on Weather, there's a small link to Flickr that takes you straight into the Flickr app. Unfortunately, it doesn't work today. We still have a lot of work to do to make all of those work the right way, but that's the intent. We display bits of news digests now across many of the applications. We actually have information from news digest in AV8, we have it in the main application, and we have it in the news application quite obviously. This is a case where deep linking works a little bit better, still not as well as we thought. And then we have cases where it works really, really well. So deep linking is one of those bits of experience that you have to have yourself, especially as you work in an ecosystem application. What is the best way to display the deepest information about that piece of content? What is the best environment to display the content? And Android technically easy to design if you design it well upfront. It makes it easy to implement. That's a philosophy that we have followed between our ecosystem. As an example, we wanted to work between Web and Flickr, but also slightly outside of the Yahoo ecosystem. When we did UseDigest presents you that very native, very compact, very mobile optimized view of news as a story. Then if you want to dig deeper, we're going to give you external sources. We're going to have sources from Reuters, from other press agencies, from other websites. And we had to ask ourselves, these sources are actually web content. How should we display that web content? We could display it in line in a web view, or we could actually invoke the browser. And we've told ourselves, really, there's Chrome now on just about every Android device. Why wouldn't we just let users use Chrome? And they have all the facilities from Chrome. They have tab browsers, and they have bookmarks, and they have sharing, and they have all these features. So why would we try to actually implement all of that? And obviously fail, because Chrome is such a big team, such a very complex application from Google, that we're not going to be able to do as good a job. So we just duplicate to Chrome, just duplicate to any browser we have, so that when you're displaying the deep insightful version of the article in UseDigest, you can display it in your browser. And then you can be very happy if you're on Chrome coming back home later and having it in your Chrome history, maybe anywhere that Chrome gets you. Deep linking works the other way as well, which is going from the browser into the application. For a company like Yahoo, that's a very, very tough problem to solve. In theory, it's going to give you very nice intent filters so that your app is able to recognize web links that might be floating out there. And instead of displaying these web links into the browser, display them into the application. Fantastic idea. It gives you really seamless integration between the browser and the native world. It's a fantastic idea if your links are actually in a format that can fit into intent filters. That's been a difficult challenge for us. At Yahoo, it's implicit. And I do not envy the Tumblr team right now trying to solve that. Tumblr is a canonical example of where intent filters do not work. Tumblr is very, very hard because intent filters only require that you specify explicitly every single host name that you might be linking to. As it turns out, every Tumblr blog, millions and millions and millions of Tumblr blogs, every single Tumblr blog has a different host name. Tumblr is in a position where they cannot use deep links the way they like to. They have to play tricks like that. If you ever get a chance or a need to actually make those deep links work, the best way is to actually work with the web teams to design the canonical form of the deep link that will go on the web, that will redirect to whichever actual implementation you have, to make that the deep link that you share from where you are, and to make that the deep link that your application should recognize. This is how we're going to get a lot of things to work as well. We're not there yet, we're getting them a bit. Flickr is getting there. It has a bit of work to do. Other apps are getting there as well. There's a question. So the question is, given content, how can you first try to open it in the app and then try to open it in the web instead? At the API level, the intent resolvers let you do that. So the very basic APIs in Android will do what they call fire and forget, which is you actually invoke the intent resolver and you say, I have this URL, figure out how to open it. But then you can actually go deeper, you can query, you can actually try to resolve that URL, see what results are coming back, see which applications are coming wrong, and act accordingly. This is something that Google does very, very well with Play Store, actually. If you ever try to buy a phone on Play Store, and you got a link to playgoogle.com that tries to buy a phone, by default, if you have your Android device set up like that, and most probably do, you're going to end up in a Play Store. Turns out the Play Store app. Turns out the app doesn't actually know how to purchase, how to expose and purchase devices to make those applications. What they do is that they actually figure out which browser you might have installed on that device, and they redirect you out to that browser by explicitly resolving that link, showing you the right UI and getting you out there. So resolving the needs in general doesn't have to be fire and forget. You can really get information about what's available and make programmatic decisions based on that. With Play, I would say a similar trick, or we take a similar approach in some of our applications. Let me take an example. If you're in News Digest and you try to actually share an article, we're going to show you a share UI that looks and feels exactly the way the user would expect from a share UI. There's one little twist, which is at the top, you actually have all of the other applications that show up on that share UI, even if the application is not installed. How do we do that? We obviously enumerate the list of all applications that we could be sharing into, figure out which of the other applications are already there, figure out in which order to place them. We hardcode a list of extra Yahoo applications we want to have there, starting with mail. And if you click that Yahoo mail UI, that Yahoo mail account, and you have it installed, we know it because we can programmatically query if you have it installed or not. If it's not installed, we're going to take you to the Play Store or to the relevant application store to install it. So a lot of extra delight. We're talking about applications with soul. Those small refinements are what gets the user happy. The user who's already using a bunch of Yahoo applications might not have Mail installed, suddenly it's going to be guided to the path of installing Yahoo Mail. One last thing that becomes more and more important as applications become a lot more rich and a lot more integrated, sharing data between applications. As we're starting to display more content from the Yahoo ecosystem into other applications, as we're starting to display news into the main application so that you can actually see your basic Yahoo life, the very basic Yahoo life in the main application. As we start to display bits of News Digest or weather in other applications like Aviate, we've got to share a lot of data between these applications. That's true for account data. Obviously, you want to sign into one application and be signed into a lot of other applications. But that's also true for other types of data. My News Digest edition is something that I want to be consistent across all the apps. I keep actually telling the teams, please make it happen. I'm tired. My weather temperature setting is one that I want to be consistent across all the apps. Yahoo is in a very interesting position because of the way we've grown our mobile teams. Not all the apps that we have today as Yahoo applications started live as Yahoo applications. Many did, but notably two of them did not. The Sparse application and Aviate were not initially Yahoo applications. They were applications that already had very significant user bases when this company were acquired by Yahoo. As a result, these applications ship without being signed by the Yahoo signature. All the mechanisms that we know in Android about establishing trust between applications are based on signatures, do not actually work for Yahoo Sparse or for Aviate. For a long time, that actually stopped us. We just didn't have a good solution for that, and we had literally very separate ecosystems. We had to sign in separately, but the data was not properly shared between the applications rather than going through the server. It was actually very painful. We've been working on solving that solution, and it turns out it's really easy. Instead of just relying on Android's mechanism to just say all applications with the same signature trust one another, and outside of that world there's no access at all. The way we implemented that, we now expose services and content providers between those applications so that the applications can communicate with one another. And we actually establish our own notion of trust between applications. And we do that by just using the APIs that exist in Binder, going into a content provider, going into a service, so that the colleague can actually check the identity of the caller against the IP listed signatures. In the other direction, the caller can actually check the identity either by using a bound service and checking the non-connect callback, or by using a content provider, whatever the name of the API. Content provider client is a way you can connect to a content provider, and then double check who you're connecting to, verify that you actually trusted before feeding the data service. The reason why that's very important, not just for Yahoo, but for everyone, this is a great mechanism to get applications So the question is really, a lot of that information is coming from deep inside Yahoo, and what's the best way to keep up with the trends coming from Yahoo and also everywhere else. Kevin just earlier from Tumblr essentially gave the answer, which is look at what other people do. To get a good idea of what Yahoo is doing, you can actually look at Yahoo's own applications. We release, on average, a new application every 2 months. This year, we've already released Yahoo News Digest, Yahoo Stream, fully reimplemented version of Yahoo Finance, and AV8 went actually public with a non-beta version. We continue evolving these applications, but if you really want to see what we want Yahoo applications to do and how we imagine Yahoo applications and all applications should work, look at all our applications, look especially at the most recent ones, because they represent our latest view on that problem. And they're going to continue evolving. We're going to start to have more and more aspects about material design. We're going to see, I guess I'm going to reveal it a tiny bit, but it's not a surprise, the primary call to action on News Digest is to actually share the article. Today, it's an action bar, it's a transparent action bar. This is probably going to show up as a tiny little circle on the bottom right with an accent color. So really, there aren't really any big secrets about what I've revealed. A few tricks about implementation, so anybody who spends a bit of time thinking about that can figure that out. But mostly, look at what we do, look at what other people do. We're looking at what Google is doing with the placement of the settings. We have shown guideline for all those that settings need to be second to last in the protection menu and action bar. And yet, most Google applications now have it close to the bottom of the navigation drawer. Except Android Wear, that actually has it directly in the action bar. So Google is also looking at ways to evolve. I'm going to read between the lines. I'm going to assume that the network of the guidelines for material, especially for that interaction design, are going to put settings somewhere in the action bar, in the navigation drawer. So you can start to think about moving in there as well. At least you're going to be consistent with Google, and there's a good chance you're going to be consistent with the guidelines. Another 30 seconds for one last question.